Right, Neoclassicism is the name given to the Western movements in the decorative and visual arts, literature, theater, music, and architecture that draws inspiration from the classical art and culture of ancient Greece or ancient Rome. The main neoclassical movement coincided with the 18th century of the Age of Enlightenment and continued through the 19th century, completing with the Romanticism movement. In architecture, the style continued through the 19th and 20th centuries and even into the 21st. Neoclassicism. Alright class, let's take a look at an experiment on a bird in the air pump. It's a 1768 oil-on-canvas painting by Joseph Wright of Derby, one of a number of candlelit scenes that Wright painted during the 1760s. The painting departed from convention of the time by depicting a scientific subject in the reverential manner formerly reserved for scenes of historic and religious significance. The painting depicts a natural philosopher, the forerunner of modern scientists, recreating one of Robert Boyle's air pump experiments in which a bird is deprived of air before various onlookers. So here you see the bird up here, and it doesn't look so good. The group exhibits a variety of reactions, but for most of the audience, scientific curiosity overcomes concern for the bird. The central figure looks out of the picture as if inviting the viewer's participation in the outcome. And that would be this gentleman right here looking out into the audience saying, come on, why don't you check out this experiment. We've got these little girls over here. This one's a little bit worried about the death of the bird. And then we have these other people, they look like it's more of a social event. But nevertheless, this was a very important time and painting. Let's take a look at the Corinthian maid. Josiah Wedgwood, the pioneer pottery manufacturing, commissioned this mythological scene that illustrates the invention of the art of modeling bas-relief sculpture, where you see a relief of someone based off of a shadow. The girl was the daughter of a potter in Corinth. The boyfriend was about to embark on a perilous journey to foreign lands, taking only a spear and his dog. As a memento, she traced her sleeping lover's silhouette on the wall. Her father then used the drawing to model a clay relief, which he baked into a kiln to create a ceramic keepsake. Joseph Wright, a master of artificial illumination, concealed a hanging lamp behind the curtain, suggesting a source of the beam that cast the youth's shadow. In contrast to the lamp's gentle glow, intense sparks and embers leap inside the pottery's fiery furnace. Here you can see his sword, his spear. Got the dog down here. She's got some type of writing utensil, and she is tracing the shadow from the young man. Quite a piece of work from neoclassical. Alright, The Death of Socrates by David is a 1787 oil and canvas painting by the French painter David. Like many of his works of the decade, the painting focuses on classical subject. In this case, the story of the execution of Socrates, told by Plato. In the story, Socrates has been convicted of corrupting the youth of Athens and introducing strange gods, and has been sentenced to die by drinking poison hemlock. Socrates, rather than fleeing when the opportunity arises, used the death as a final lesson to his pupils and faces it calmly. While in the painting, the old man in the white robe, sitting upright in a bed, one hand extended over the cup. So here you have Socrates, and the other hand up in the air, gesturing. He is surrounded by them in a varying age, most showing emotional distress, unlike the stoic old man. The young man handing him the cup looks the other way with his face in the free hand. So you have that gentleman right here. Another young man clutches the thigh of the old man, and clearly upset to the impending loss. An elderly man sits at the end of the bed, slumped over and looking at his lap. And that's just a gentleman over here. To the left of the painting, the wall becomes an arch with more men in the background. And you can see that it is a prison, and that Socrates had some shackles down here, and the last writings of Socrates or sayings could have been transcribed down here, but he shortly thereafter drank the hemlock. This is The Death of Socrates. The Death of Marat is a painting by David of the murdered French revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat. It is one of the most famous images of the French Revolution. David was a leading French painter as well as a member of the Revolutionary Committee of General Security. The painting shows the radical journalist lying dead in his bath, July 13, 1793, after being murdered by Charlotte Corday. Painted in the months after Marat's murder, it has been described by critics as the first modernist painting for the way it took stuff of politics as its material and did not transmute it. So here you can see Marat. He's laid out in such a way that it almost seems Christ-like. He'd been stabbed numerous times in the torso. You can see this is like his workstation over here, and this might even have been some of his final writings before being killed. The death of Marat. Right, the coronation of Napoleon was a painting completed by David in 1807. It took him a couple years. He started in 1805. He was the official painter of Napoleon. The painting has imposing dimensions, as it is almost 10 meters wide, so that's more than 30 feet, and it's more than 6 feet high. That's more than 6 meters, sorry, that's more than 18 feet high, so it's quite a large painting. The crowning and coronation took place at the Notre Dame in Paris, a way for Napoleon to make it clear that he was a son of the Revolution. So here we have Napoleon right here. He is getting ready to crown the Queen. Back here we have the Pope, who is overlooking it. In those days it was very common for the Pope to crown the king, but in this case Napoleon thought that he was, above the Pope, so had him sit down, and here he is preparing to place the crown on his queen's head. David actually put himself in the audience back up here in the gallery, but within these people that are in the background, there are numerous dignitaries as well as other heads of state that have come to see this crowning in 1807. This is the coronation of Napoleon. Alright, Isaac Newton by William Blake. In this picture, Isaac Newton is shown sitting naked and crouched on a rocky outcropping covered with algae, apparently at the bottom of the sea. So here's all the algae, and he's sitting on a rock, kind of hunched over. You can see the wave action right here with this moss or whatever it is at the bottom of the sea. His attention is focused upon diagrams he draws with a compass upon a scrolls that appeared to unravel from his mouth, coming all the way down here. Blake's opposition to the Enlightenment was deeply rooted. He wrote in his annotations that science is the tree of death. Newton's theory of optics was especially offensive to Blake, who made a clear distinction between the vision of a vegetative eye and a spiritual vision. The deistic view of God as a distant creator who played no role in daily affairs was an anathema to Blake, who regularly experienced spiritual visions. So you can see by this painting, a neoclassical in nature, that Blake is clearly making fun of the Enlightenment and the age of the time where people's education and moving away from a spiritual or church-oriented point of view was not his point of view whatsoever. Isaac Newton. All right, in this painting, Napoleon on his imperial throne, 1806, by Ingres, it shows Napoleon as emperor in the costume he wore for his coronation, seated in the circular-backed throne with armrests adorned with ivory balls. So here are some ivory balls on both sides. In his right hand, as you can see right here, in his right hand, the scepter of Charlemagne, and in his left hand, justice. So here's his left hand with justice. On his head is the golden laurel wreath, similar to the one worn by Caesar, as we can see right here. He also wears an emery hood with a great collar and a gold embroidered satin tunic and an emery-lined purple velvet cloak decorated with gold beads. The coronation sword is in its scabbard, which you can see right here on his left hand. And the subject is wearing white shoes embroidered with gold. Down here he's got some sweet looking shoes with gold. in resting on a cushion. The carpet under the throne displays an imperial eagle. On the left side of the painting, Napoleon's right, you can see the signature of the painter, and over here the date. This is Napoleon on his imperial throne. La Grande Olesque by Ingres. This painting depicts an Olesque, also referred to as a harem woman. Today, we would have simply called her a sex slave. She is surrounded by luxury, relaxing among riches, and had her own slaves to attend to her own needs. This, of course, is only if she is summoned to perform those explicit acts. The image depicts the ideal, and it casts a very positive view on the harem life of the time, which was not the case. It is constructed an image, and it is a fantasy. The Olesque had been part of the Ottoman and North African tradition written about in Europe. The harem culture was romanticized into a positive light and became a staple of Western European erotic literature, which may have influenced artists who never actually traveled outside of Europe, especially not North Africa or the Ottoman Empire. From this painting, he used a French model and surrounded her with objects associated with the harem culture, such as the peacock feather, which we can see right down here at the bottom, and a fancy footstool with Turkish fabric. There is also a long pipe nearby, as harem women often smoked opiates to keep them subdued and prevent them from resisting their expected duties. So here you got the hookah pipe down here. There is also an odd element to the painting. The woman's back is unusually elongated, so you can see how long her back, it just keeps going. There are 4 extra vertebrae. She also has short thighs, so you can see how that's the extent of her thigh right there. Her body has been manipulated by the artist for the purpose of visual pleasure, both for the artist and for the viewer. This idea of sexual pleasure is amplified by the fact that the woman's backside faces the viewer, but she turns her head and has a coy smile on her face. This adds almost a playful tone to the situation, which was anything but the case, as a sex slave during this time would not be as coy as this picture seems to lead on the believer to be. And once again, this is La Grande Olesque.